What do you think of the parents that kick their kids out as soon as they have turned 18 years old? They're not Italian, that's for sure. Here in Italy, when the child is finally ready to leave the house at the age of 35, the family gets together to bid them a tearful goodbye before they move 1 kilometer away from their parents' house. My cousin lived at home in his parents' massive house, then got married, and then he and his wife lived there. Then they had 2 kids who were living there. Then my uncle sold his house and he and my cousin together bought an even more massive house. And the entire family is still living in that massive house. My 50-year-old cousin still lives at home, but now the dynamic is shifted more to his parents living with him as they both needed to be cared for. In this situation, I feel most sorry for his wife, who never had her own house without her in-laws and is now basically their nurse. Rich Hispanics do this too. I always thought it was cool that my friend had all his grandparents relaxing by the pool together, or that his aunt had like a steady list of suitors she would walk all over. She was pretty hot. It seemed way more eventful and full of life than the alternative IMO. Yeah, it opens you up to more loss and some of the hardships of aging, but also all the good stuff. Also, you could show up at his house at like 1 a.m. and somebody will be grilling steaks and always have a plate for you. I was 17, a semester away from graduating. My evangelical parents found some weed in my brother's room. I woke up early on a school morning to the sound of my father angrily throwing mine and my brother's things out of the house and out into the yard. He and I spent the next 5 years homeless, at best sleeping on a friend's floor, at worst sleeping on concrete sidewalks exposed to the elements, and the worst in people. I'm 30 for now and off the streets almost a decade now. But it forever changed the course of my life for the worse. And worst of all, my brother was never able to recover. He took his life almost a year ago. My parents divorced for a second time about a year after kicking us out. My father almost immediately remarried. I later found out that he had put his stepson through college and paid his rent while we were eating out of dumpsters. That was probably the most painful thing I ever had to absorb and internalize. I think some people are even potentially able to self-sustain in that situation, albeit a very small percentage. But to shelter your kids completely and not give them the skills to survive and then abandon them is abuse in my eyes. This happened in my house to my older sibling. He was not close to graduation. He had early childhood trauma. I was the first child of my mother's second marriage. Her first was violently abusive and had learning delays as a result. When my exacting mother found weed in his room and a pipe, she kicked him out of the house to protect me. I was 6 and I was in no danger of getting into weed. He only had a 10th grade education at the time, despite being 18. He lived on the street, got into hard drugs, had a schizophrenic break, and ended up hospitalized. There was a lifelong struggle then for stability. He was in and out of mental health supportive housing, and later, he went off his meds and has been seen for a decade and a half. I sincerely believe the harsh treatment he received from our mother created the circumstances that led to his lifelong battle with schizophrenia, yanking the rug out from under an 18-year-old because of some antiquated legal notion of adulthood that is not based on brain science or our understanding of human development seems to me to be a parenting and societal fail. My boyfriend got kicked out at 18 and his parents literally said to his face, "Since you were an accident and we didn't mean to have you, we need you out of the house now so we can actually relax like we used to before you were born." Anyway, I think extremely badly of them. I can't imagine having to deal with that. My dad lost a place to live at his parents' house for the summer his last year of college, and luckily my mom's parents let him stay in their basement. From what my parents told me, my dad was devastated by this. My parents' rule was we would have a place to stay without paying rent as long as we were in school or after we graduated while we were getting our first job. I really appreciated their support and not needing to worry about housing during the summers while I was in college. We'll be doing the same with my 3 kids. Boomer parent here. Our 2 sons were welcome to live at home as long as they wanted, as long as they were going to school and or working. My oldest is 31 and married. He lived at home for 9 months after he graduated from college, then moved in with his now wife after she finished school. Our younger son is 27. He flunked out of college, spun his wheels for a bit and got sidetracked by the pandemic. He got off his butt, went to community college, got his associates and was just offered a full-time job with benefits. He'll probably be out within the next 3 months. We have no regrets. It's their right, but I disagree with it. I was kicked out the day I turned 17. I lived out of my car for 3 months while working fast food and completing my senior year. I would have probably dropped out had it not been for my best friend's dad. He found out about the situation and forced me to move in with him. He wouldn't take no for an answer. He had recently got divorced because his stay-at-home wife was cheating on him. Because they had a spare bedroom and I was friends with both his sons that lived with him, he told me it's just us guys living there and having fun. You stay until you finish school. After that, you can pay $100 a month in rent until you decide what to do. Don't argue with me. The man's a saint. I wouldn't have been able to keep going to school without him, and he knew it. He's a guy who had to drop out to work back in the day to support his family. He got his GED and clawed his way up to head engineer at a factory so he could afford a nice home for his wife and kids. He bought a nice two-story home that he barely got to stay in for women who didn't appreciate him. The men even came home every single day and cooked meals for us to make sure we'd eat. In the middle of fighting a divorce, trying to get custody of both of his kids, and keep the house he paid for, he took me in, adding to the stress. He did that for me just because I was friends with his sons. If I ever get rich, that man is getting an early retirement and a comfortable home wherever he chooses. If that man can do all that for someone that isn't his child, parents have no excuse for not helping their own kids out. Edit. I had no idea this would blow up this much. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to answer some questions that are being asked. This was years ago and I still bump into them from time to time, but we've all drifted apart in these years due to adult lives being busy. Whoa. I still talk to them every once in a while. They are still my friends and I can hit them all up anytime I wanted to. I still play Xbox with the sons a few times a year. I always make sure to have them tell their dad thank you for me. I had a serious heartfelt talk with him about a year after I graduated and moved out. I still think about that man nearly every day of my life. As for my family, I was not a perfect child at all and I have some blame. The thing is, I honestly feel I never would have been the way I was in my later teen years had they been more accepting of myself and my lifestyle. I saw my other friends being able to come to their parents and talk to them without fear of judgment from them, or God. Ultimately, religion is the reason I was kicked out. They are strict Southern Baptist. I did cut my parents out of my life for 3 years after I was kicked out. They never contacted me for the first year. They tried to reconnect after the first year, but I have them 2 more years of silence. I let them back in my life, but on my terms. It was easy to make my demands considering I didn't need them anymore. We now have a healthy relationship. We can finally look each other in the eyes and be honest. I no longer fear their judgment. That's honestly the ingredient we were missing in our relationship. I now spend a decent amount of time with my father and mother. It's funny, my dad and I actually have long conversations about our different ideologies and beliefs. We even poke fun at each other about it. It's nice, considering I never actually was able to connect with him much growing up. I'm the first male in the past 5 generations of my family that didn't become a Southern Baptist pastor. I think my father sees it as opportunity to understand how people living a different life than him are. And I see it as an opportunity to better understand why he did what he did. A lesson I had to learn the hard way is that it's better to seek understanding than to live with hate in your heart. He respects me and I respect him. It was hard for my mom at first. She comes from a small town of 300 people where everyone goes to church happily and believes anything their parents tell them. She would be abrasive with me at first when I would talk about how I drink or live with my girlfriend. Hell, she still does from time to time, but my father always nudges her into calming down. My roommate was kicked out of his house by his mom when he was 18 by being driven to a gas station a fair distance away and just left there. On his birthday, he found a way home to find all his stuff on the lawn, the locks on the doors changed, the doorbell disabled, all the blinds and stuff closed, mother hiding within. He lived with his dad long enough to afford his own place and peaced out. Years later, he gets a text from his mom who found his number by asking around. Basically said, "Hello, is this Jim? It's your mom. Just wanted to catch up," and the ice-cold motherfucker responds with, "I don't know. If you're looking for him, maybe check the gas station where you last saw him. Maybe he's still there." And that was the last thing he said, lol. Apparently she was all pissed off and tried to get at him through his dad, but the dad was like, "You dumped him off at a fucking gas station, you psychopath. How do you think he would feel about you?" And just stonewalled her. Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. Good luck.